Yeah, that is something I'm very fond of saying. I think if I look back in my go-to-market career, 201, every successful product launch I've ever been a part of has been successful because we listened to the market first. And I think that that's such a flip from, as you said, right? You want to put on the headset and go on stage and you want to be this visionary, but also it's just way easier to listen to people and give them what they're looking for. So I think it's interesting that flip and approach has influenced a little bit both of roadmap and in messaging. It also seems like it's given you an opportunity to tap into some of your really great like enterprise rep skills because you're really good at asking questions and getting to the need behind the need. Uh, what was the big, like you had this kind of emotional reaction, this aha moment. What happened next?
What happened next was we started getting qualified meetings with customers and converting those into qualified opportunities and knowing why and understanding. I remember a particular meeting with a CTO. I think it was like an 8-minute discovery, 12-minute discovery in a dedicated conference room at the event. And we just knew exactly what questions to ask, and we understood exactly what each of his responses meant. Myself and a BD advisor who's 10 years in the industry, who made the warm intro. Once it started to feel like my pattern recognition was kicking in, I was seeing, okay, these are the common pain points, these are the common challenges. And then I did feel like, weirdly, I did feel like a visionary at that point because I was able to see my analysis of the market dynamic and the technology trends is lining up with the customer pain points, is then lining up with my messaging. And that's why we were getting second conversations. We were getting proof of concept artifacts we would deliver. And then we were setting up our first paid pilot engagement, which just wrapped at the end of last month.
Yeah, I think that's a very crucial point, right? I think, myself and Jennifer working with a number of founders, what we see is often that the founders tries really hard to push their perspective and to make the prospective customer understand their perspective, right? And, there's a lot of consumer psychology that goes into obviously buying and selling, which you're very much aware of. And oftentimes when it comes to B2B selling, what they want is a relationship with you before they even start talking about business. So when you go in with the intent to just listen and understand, what you're doing is you're making them feel heard and you're putting their problems first, for you put yourself and your product first. And then from there, you understand how to position your product to best meet their needs by listening to them and building rapport with them before selling to them. And that's a transition that I've watched you make while analyzing all of your calls. And so let's talk about when you made that shift and you landed your first pilot, right? Because I remember we had a hard time getting from stage 0 to stage 1, and now you're crushing stage 1s, getting into early pilot conversations now. So now that you've taken this new marketing approach, you're listening first before pushing your product. And then now tell us a story about getting your first pilot, which was a big moment for you.
Absolutely. Timing, finding the right early believers to become first adopters, I find really challenging because you need to wait someone who's already successful to take a risk on you when you're a startup, especially if you're a startup selling to SMB or enterprise. So they have a selection of vendors available that are way more established than you, that have way more marketing budget than you, that are way more visible than you. So if you are not better than the competition at listening, at understanding, at speaking your prospects' language, at relating, building that traction step by step, you will not get to a pilot phase like we had done. It was funny from like a funnel perspective because we were trying a few different things to attract prospects into the funnel. Our advisor reposted one of my LinkedIn posts, and this was not even one of my best posts. This was not even one of my best posts, but it hit right before a major conference. And two people liked it immediately, like within 20 minutes. And they were both highly qualified prospects. So I did personal one-on-one outreach to those prospects to start a conversation and positioned a meeting in person at this upcoming conference. So this is what I mean by timing, follow through, confidence. When I did the meeting, it was over lunch, actually. It was related to the conference, but it was just lunch, and we had a really good time. Initially, they said this is not a good time for us to run a pilot. We have a lot of internal technical migration going on. We are ingesting some new acquisitions that we've made. And this approach as well, because it's using AI to complement humans, it could be controversial for the team. There could be pushback in the team. But despite all of these factors, we landed a paid 30-day pilot with this customer. And it really came down to the follow-up conversation from that lunch with the other director. So the first director positioned us internally. We shared some emails, we shared some collateral. And at first the client said, no, not right now. But because we had this kind of internal champion, he helped us reframe the offer in this kind of low, no risk, zero integration, a zero dev integration required. And they were like tantalized by the upside. So when I reframed this and my second proposal, it moved really quickly within 1 week to starting a paid pilot.
That's spectacular. And that has opened the door for some other opportunities. And as before the podcast, we were chatting about the customer calls, and they've just been coming fast and furious. So once you had that kind of one proof of concept, it's really taken off from there. Yeah.
Yeah. We operate in a regulated industry with some of our revenue streams. So it's when you have referenceable customer cases, those names speak louder than your pitch, right? So there is also like a FOMO aspect. We talked about there's competitor FOMO, like their competitors didn't want to miss on this new technology upside. Their partners don't want to miss on it. And then we've now cross-sold internally to different teams in different regions or different product families, because we're like, this other product family loves us. Do you want to check us out too? And we're already under MNDA. We're already through their vendor onboarding process. So we're like a known vetted quantity at that point. I think it's pretty encouraging that as a startup, we've been able to land some early enterprise engagements.
So I think we can look now to a little bit of the future, but one of the things that you say is that you talk about falling in love with the problem space instead of the solution, and that's been part of that reframing for you. What is that? Talk a little bit more about that. What does that look like day to day? What advice would you give on that concept for other founders? Like, give us the philosophy.
Yeah. So I read a book by Melissa Perry, who's a thought leader in product management. And I also had the chance to see her speak live in Hamburg, which was excellent. She wrote a book called Escaping the Build Trap, which is ostensibly for product people, but every founder is a product person. There were some things there that really stuck with me. And my favorite point she made was, do not fall in love with your solution. Fall in love with a problem that you just can't shake. Fall in love with a problem that your mind keeps coming back to with ideas or angles or experiments you want to run. And that's what I've found with Omnisent. So I'm really trying to cherish that, lean into that, because whether we're selling to marketing agencies or sports books or media broadcasting, they all have the same sort of challenge. And I find that challenge fascinating, which is how can we make sports experiences more compelling based on what the audience actually cares about? And so that kind of led me realize that I needed to take a step back from my initial framing on what the product is or what the product does. Even though we had built some really cool stuff and we had shipped some really cool code and features, I actually needed to reset, take on board what customers were saying to me. And that's where RTP and your jobs to be done analysis really helped me, because I started to obsess not over, is it an API or is it a CSV? Is it a dashboard or is it like this kind of thing? And instead I was obsessed over, man, if they want to start covering NBA, are they just going to hire 12 more people to do that? And what happens when the games are in a different time zone? Are they going to wake up at 4 in the morning to cover the World Cup? Yeah, and it turns out today customers wake up at 4 in the morning to cover the North American World Cup here in Europe. So yeah, by staying in love with the problem space, I'm putting myself shoulder to shoulder with decision makers and my users. So if I'm delighting users and they vote to continue from the pilot, then I'm doing a good job as a product owner.
How has your thoughts about shaping your roadmap changed since taking like a market in listening first approach? And how has that changed since before you really started to take a more market in approach?
It's really banging my head against the wall. Like I feel, I think, and I'm sure other founders have this feeling that, so in my incubator program, they even told us that you will feel like you've had a glimpse of the future and you've like time traveled into the past and you're trying to show people the newspaper from the future, but they don't believe you. That's really what my sales calls were feeling like. And I was like, I was starting to doubt myself. And I was like, what I'm hearing them say on stage and what I'm pitching them lines up, but they're actually not there yet. So we currently have been seeing a big hype cycle around AI and AI expansion. And I realized that what companies were broadcasting in their press releases, in their on-stage conferences about their level of AI maturity didn't always match the reality on the ground for teams. So I was very naive about that. So I think what I needed to do was understand, oh, okay, I don't need to sell them on the future. I need to sell them on how their week gets better. And that's something I don't even need to sell you on. If I come to you and I'm like, hey, would you like to have your week be 80% less annoying and spend more quality time doing what you love and doing what you do best? Would you be interested? And that's like what we're pitching now when we talk to teams. And it's way more fun than saying, look, you have to do this because it's inevitable. Or look, you have to do this because you told the market you were doing it. So now you have to do it. Like, that sucks.
Yeah, one thing that I always tell people is that customers buy for present value and investors invest in future value. So if you're pitching a vision of the future to a customer, they're thinking, I have problems right now. I don't need to know about what you're going to solve 6 to 12 months from now. I have problems today that need solving. And then also when you take that market in approach, you start to hear that, and that's then how your positioning changes and your roadmap changes to solve today's problems. But then you still understand your vision of the future to then go pitch to people who want to. So yeah, definitely sounds like you began to understand like the difference between the two storytelling philosophies about how you're going to earn capital. Like one, you earn from your customers by solving their problems, and two, you earn from investors by having a clear vision of the future and how you want to evolve your product and your.
Yeah, and I'm bullish on both cases now, because now that I've talked to customers and I've talked to investors and I've been to the conferences and I'm reading the right people, I can see both those storylines much more clearly than even 2 or 3 months ago.